All right, so here we go. Let's make sure that we have not forgotten the stuff that we were taught before we broke about 10 days ago, okay? So I'm gonna start you off with a problem, and I want you to solve it, okay? So here's your practice problem. 3 7/8 plus 6 2/4. So that's a mixed number that has different denominators. Before we left for our little spring break, we learned how to do this. So I want you to take about 2 minutes and solve that. Copy that problem onto that empty piece of paper that I just had you turn your notebook to and create an answer. And make sure that your answer that you get, you put in simplest form. Because that's one of the major things that we learned about fractions, is that you can't finish a fraction problem and not have the answer in simplest form. Are you working it out? You already have an answer? Remember, there's some steps you have to take to get to this answer. You gotta do a couple of things before you can get to your answer. When you're done, if you can just put your pencil down, so that way my eyes can see who's finished and who's still working. Almost everybody done. Those of you working, I'm gonna give you an extra like 30 seconds. Okay. So to solve a problem like this, when we started learning the chapter 6 stuff, we learned that the first thing we have to do is what? What's the first thing, Xander, I have to do to solve this problem? I gotta find the least common denominator, okay? So that means if I can't look at 8 and 4 and see right away what the smallest common denominator is, then what could I use for help, Xander? I could list the multiples. So if I list the multiples of 4 and I list the multiples of 8, Xander, what's the first number that I'm going to come to that they have in common? 8. So 8 is what my new denominator is going to become. Okay, that's the least common denominator. Now, is there anybody in the audience who did not choose 8, but who chose 16? Okay, that's okay. What about 24? You may choose 24 or 32. All of those things will work because they are all common factors. They're common multiples of 8 and 4. But they're just not the smallest one. So what did we learn? If you don't choose the smallest one that they have in common, then what did we learn we have to do at the end?
You have to do more work.
You gotta do more work. You gotta simplify more in the end. So we're trying to just make this problem as easy as it can be by choosing the smallest denominator to start with, and that's 8, okay? Now, what do we have to do next? James, what's the next step gonna be?
We have to divide the denominator from the new fraction to the old fraction.
Beautiful, James. So what's 8 divided by 8?
1.
And then what do I do with that 1, James, that I got?
You multiply it by the numerator.
Good. And what's 1 times 7?
7.
Beautiful. James, let's do the same thing on this side. 8 divided by 4 is?
2.
And then 2 times my 2 up top?
4.
Beautiful. Okay. Now, since this is an addition problem, all I have to do is what? What do I do next? Carson, what do I do next? What is 7 plus 4? Over what? Beautiful. What's 11 over 8, Carson? That's an improper fraction. High five to you, Carson. That thing's improper. The big number's on the top. I'm loving this. We're not forgetting anything. This is awesome. So how do I simplify this thing? Can't leave it as improper. Addison, what do?
You divide.
I do. I have to divide. Now, I'm not looking for a common factor in this one. We don't do that when they're improper. We have to use division, right? So the top number is too heavy, so I'm gonna flip this thing on its side, and I'm gonna do a little division. 8 goes into 11, how many times, Addison? What do I have left? And that becomes my?
3/8.
Good. So when I solve 11 over 8, it turns into 1 3/8. But Addison, is that my final answer?
No.
Why not?
Because you have to add the big numbers from the original fractions.
Good. I have this 3 over here, this 6 right here, and now I have a 1 over here. And all those have to get added together also. So Addison, when I do, what becomes my final answer?
10 and then 3/8.
Beautiful. How many of you got 10 3/8?
I didn't do math.
Is 3/8 in simplest form?
Yeah.
Yes, I did not have to do any extra work. So my final answer is 10 3/8. Show me by hands, how many of you got it? That's excellent. That's almost the whole crew. So for those of you who didn't get it, where'd your mistake happen? So what was your common denominator that you started with? Because we didn't have to do any simplifying at all. So what number did you choose to start with? You chose an 8, okay? So you've got 11 over 8 over here, but you kept that as 11 over 8. Remember, you can't ever keep a fraction as improper, okay? Whenever the number on the top is too big or is bigger than the number on the bottom, that's a problem. And that the first thing that your brain should see is that the number on top can't be bigger than the number on the bottom. I have to simplify, okay? What about you, Mason? Did you get it?
Yeah.
You got the answer correct? All right, well, then I need to see your hand next time when I ask for a show of hands. All right, so for the most part, the whole group got it. So that means you didn't forget anything. And that makes the heart happy. Okay, so now we're ready to move into what's next. Okay, so directly underneath this stuff that you are currently working on, just kind of maybe draw a little squiggly line. And let's title this thing today. This is chapter 7. Subtracting fractions. And mixed numbers. Okay. So this is what this chapter is going to all be about. Learning how to now subtract fractions and mix them. You've already been taught how to add them. Now it's time to learn how to subtract them. So does this feel like this is going to be something that's difficult?
No.
It should not. Because as long as you know, hang on, I gotta get my book. As long as you guys know how to add fractions and mixed numbers, then you know how to subtract them, okay? So let me show you an example of a problem, okay? So your first little kind of star note that you're gonna tell yourself is that you subtract fractions the same way you add them. Okay, so make sure you're taking notes with me. Don't just watch me do all the work. I've been doing this for a really long time, so I already know how to do this. I'm writing this stuff up here so that you can learn from it. If you just stare at me, you're not really helping yourself at all, okay? So let me show you an example of what I mean, all right? So here we go. And I want you all to watch how simple this is, okay? All right, so we are gonna go to, let me grab a practice problem. All right, so I want you to look at a problem like this one, okay? 1/3 minus 1/4. All right, anybody wanna take a guess? If I subtract fractions the exact same way that I add them, What would I do first, Shane, in this problem? Least common denominator. Least common denominator. Yeah. And so, Shane, what would the least common denominator for 3 and 4 become? It would. So directly underneath, I'm going to start building my fraction that has my least common denominator, which is 12. What would the next step that I then do, Emily? Yeah, I would then divide my denominators. So Emily, once I divide my denominators and then multiply that by the numerator, what would this become right here? This divided by this is what? 4. And then 4 times that is, so this would become a 4. What would this side become if I did all that same stuff? And then 3 times 1 is 3, okay? Here's where things go a little bit different. If this was an adding problem, then I would add 4 and 3, right? But it's not, it's a subtracting problem. So what do you think I'm going to do? Just subtract. What's 4 minus 3? 1. And what's the bottom number going to be? 12. That's your answer.
Why are you teaching us this?
So
I could be doing this when I was in 2nd grade.
Now, there were some people that when I taught them this in the other class a little bit ago, they were like, was that just an easy problem? Like, give us another one where it is a little bit harder. And I said, okay, you want a harder problem? So let me give you another one, okay? All right. So let me try this one. Ready? Let's try 3 over 7 minus 1 over 3. So remember, you don't do anything different. Your first thing that you would need to do is find your common denominator. So what would the common denominator, if I had a 7 and I had a 3, what would the common denominator need to be? What would it need to be, Addison? It would need to be 21, okay? So I would need to start building new fractions with a bottom number of a 21, okay? That, for most of you, is the hardest part, is finding that new denominator. Okay. When I divide this and I times it by the number up top, what do I get here, everybody? 9. When I divide this and I times it up top, what do I get? 7. What's 7 minus 9? What's 9 minus 7? 2. Over? 21. 2 over 21. Okay.
Why is it so easy? You said that
Now, some people have said to me, will it always be this easy? And my answer to you is kind of, but not always. So I want you to take yourself back to when you were in 2nd grade for a minute. Okay? Don't remember any of that. So when you were in 2nd grade, you started learning how to subtract numbers. And so you started out learning how to do something like 34 minus 22. And your teacher taught you that when you subtract, now remember, you're just in 2nd grade, so this right now in 5th grade looks so easy. But when you were in 2nd grade, it wasn't that simple, okay? But your teachers taught you that you have to start by subtracting the numbers in the ones place first, right?
Yeah.
So if I have 4 on the top and 2 on the bottom, can I do that?
Yes.
Yes. If I have 4, I can take 2 away, and I end up with 2. Then I get to move over to the 10th place and do some subtraction. What's 3 minus 2? 1. And so we instantly learned that 12 was our answer. But then things started to get a little bit harder. Because we got to the point where instead of having the big number at the top, we had the big number at the bottom. So you learn that you still start in the ones place, but now if I only have 2, I can't take 4 away, right? So what did you have to learn to do? Borrow. You had to learn that you had to go to your tens place and you had to borrow. Now, here's my question to you. What did you really borrow when you borrowed from that 3?
A 10.
You borrowed a 10. You went to the tens house and you took away all the 10.
I kidnapped.
So that whole 10 that you took traveled over here to the ones place and got added to that 2 in the ones place. And that turned your 2 into a 12. 12 minus 4 is now 8. The 10 that you borrowed means now there's only 2 tens left over here. 2 minus 2 is nothing. So your answer became 8. That seems easy today.
Really easy.
When we start playing with that kind of stuff in fraction land, will you have to borrow?
Yes.
Just like you had to borrow in whole number land, you will get to the point that you have to borrow in fraction land. These example problems that we did up here did not require us to borrow. 9 minus 7 we can do, can't we? If you have 9, can you take 7 away?
Yes.
Yes. The example up above that had 4 minus 3. Can you do that?
Yes.
Yes. But when things are reversed, like 3 minus 4, that's when you have to borrow. So I had people in the other class saying, will you show us how to do that? And I said, not today. Wow! You have just proved to me that you can master how to do this first. Okay? So I want you now to open your workbook. Okay? This is why you needed your workbook. And I want you to open for just a quick second. I want you to look at page 105. Now, on page 105, I want you to notice we skipped this lesson. I did not teach you the very first lesson in chapter 7 because notice what's on this page. They took a bunch of pictures and blocks to teach you how to subtract fractions. That's a waste of time. You don't need blocks to learn how to subtract fractions.
I can need you.
So, please stop talking so much over me. So that means I'm not using it. There are things in this book that take up space. This is one of those lessons. So you're going to skip that lesson. We're not doing it. Now turn to page 107. Page 107 is what we just learned today. We learned how to subtract basic fractions, not mixed numbers, just fractions. And these fractions do not require you to borrow. They are just simply subtracting fractions. Now, I can tell you people that mistakes happen in this lesson. And I'll tell you how they happen. Because your brain naturally wants to add numbers, not subtract them. So when I grade a lot of things, when kids do this stuff, the errors happen because instead of doing 4 minus 3, they do 4 plus 3. Don't do the wrong operation. If the directions are asking you to subtract, you need to make sure you subtract. Okay? So I want everybody to take a look at problem number 1 for a minute. Okay? Notice how problem number 1 has all these weird boxes next to it. Goofy stuff. You don't have to do that.
Thanks.
Okay? We don't do math with breaking things into little boxes. I didn't teach you to do it that way, so we're not going to do it that way. Okay? But when you see a problem like that, I want you to just solve it how you would normally solve it. So notice, what is the problem for number 1? What are the numbers, the fractions they want us to subtract? Sophia.
It's 5, 6 minus 6, 8.
Right.
It's simple. It's just stacking it and making
It is, but you don't have to do all of that. That's my point. However you're comfortable with working out that problem, I want you to just work out that problem that way. If you're comfortable doing it the way we did these examples on the board up here, do it that way, okay? For some people, those boxes, those pictures, those blocks throw them off and it freaks them out.
Yes.
And so I don't want them to think that they have to do it that way. They don't. If it doesn't confuse you and you want to use the boxes, go for it. But I'm just telling you, all I want you to do is solve 5, 6 minus 6, 8. So everybody take a minute and solve that problem. 5, 6 minus 6, 8. You may have the ability to do it kind of on your page there, off to the side a little bit. You might have to rewrite it since they have all those boxes there and they're kind of in your way. This is not math that you can do in your head. This is math that you have to work out on paper. So none of us should just be staring at our book and doing this quote in your head. Okay, I want you working it out. Find that common denominator.
I think I have an answer, but I'm not sure. Double check.
Are you finished? Okay, go work it up on the board. So for those of you working, keep on working. I gave Dominic the marker, so he's gonna come up here and he's going to work this problem out. Bye, buddy. Well, you have simple, yeah. Hang on just a sec, please. Beautiful, thank you. Circle your answer, because you got a lot of work going on there.
Okay, so the least common denominator is 24, and then divide 24 by 6, and that's 4. And then 24 by 8 is 3. And then 6 times 3 is 18. 4 times 5 is 20. And then 20 minus 18 is 2 over 24, but that has to be simplified, so it's 1 over 12.
Excellent. Now, Dominic, I have a question for you, because, so Brendan over here, Brendan, you didn't choose 24, did you? No. Tell him what you chose.
48.
He chose 48. Will that work?
Yeah, it'll work. You just have to simplify it more.
Okay. So I don't want you to think that because you don't see his exact work on your paper, that it means your answer is not right. So you maybe just went about getting your answer a different way. Okay, thanks, buddy. Nice job. Okay, but your answer should be 1 over 12. Now, how many of you got to 2 over 24 and stopped? Okay, so if you don't learn anything else today, learn this. When you have a fraction like 2 over 24, the first thing that you should notice is that what kind of a number is 2? Is it odd or even? Huh? It's even. What kind of a number is 24? Even. If they're both even numbers, what can I always divide even numbers by? I can always divide it by a 2. So if you ever get to a point where you're looking at a fraction and you can't figure out how to simplify it, if they're both even numbers, just use 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 24 divided by 2 is 12. And then you would have gotten to the finish line. Okay? Yes?
On number 1, number 2, do you just like put the top numerators like on the boxes?
Are you using the boxes?
Well, I'm not using all these boxes up here. I just need to put the answer like.
Then yeah, they're just asking for you to put the numerators is all they're asking on that problem. But I'm saying you don't have to use those boxes because they can kind of get in your way. Okay? All right, let's try another one. Okay? Let's try problem number 3 and number 5. So I'm going to give you all 4 minutes to work problem 3 and 5. Now, number 3 is the exact problem as number 2. I don't know if you noticed that.
Well, yeah, it is.
Yes, Sophia.
Remember we had 3 and 5, and I had them doing.
Say what, babies?
Remember we had get to where myself.
Yeah. And notice, bless you, the directions say, find the difference, which means this is a subtracting problem. And then write your answer in simplest form. Don't leave it not in simplest form. Stay focused as you work through these problems. It's a lot of steps to take in these problems. So when we lose our focus, it's when we have our mistakes that happen.
So it's 5 and 3.
3 and 5, yeah. Yes, buddy. You can work number 5. Yeah. You done with number 3, Sophia?
Yeah, I think so.
You're doing 3. He's doing 5. Come on up and do number 3, Sophia. Now, Sophia, you gotta be careful doing that, baby. Because remember, we only want to turn it into a division problem if it's an improper fraction. So it's not improper, so we don't really want to do that. We want to look for the common like the common factors. So when you look at 4 and you look at 60, they're both even numbers. So what do we know is a factor for 4 and 60? So let's divide each of them by 2. And you can do that in your head, yeah. Hang on just a sec, please. But they're both still even, right? So keep on. Perfect. There you go, girl. Good work. Okay. All right, let's take a look real quick at Sophia's problem. So she started out her problem. She did everything beautifully, okay? She started out her problem here, and she chose 60 as her least common denominator. That's good. That's fine. Is it the least common denominator, though?
No.
No. It's okay, though, because we noticed she got to the finish line. The answer should be 1/15. So if you got that, that's great. That's what I wanted you to get. She just had to do a little more extra work at the finish line down here, because when she started the problem, she chose 60 as her least common denominator. And I think that there's one that's smaller. Do you all see the one that I have? Which one's smaller? 30. 30 is a little bit smaller, but it's okay. It still works with 60, okay? So we noticed that when she did all of her work, she ends up with 4/60. But like I told her, 4/60 is a proper fraction, so we don't need to flip it on its side and do any division. We only do that when it's improper, right? So now we have to start looking for common factors. Well, 4 and 60 are both even numbers, right? And we just learned what can even numbers always be divided by? 2. So when I divided them, I got 2/30. Okay, that's probably where you guys started, right? Those of you that chose 30, you got 2/30. But was it in simplest form?
No.
Because 2's even and so is 30. So now you had to divide each by a 2, and you ended up with 1/15. Okay? How many people got that one? Put your hand in the air if you got it, so my eyeballs can see. Don't be a fibber. If you didn't get it, don't raise it up, okay? Let's try number 5. So Braden's gonna try problem number 5. All right, so for problem number 5, we had, oh my gosh, I can't find it. Where is it? 5 over 6?
And 1.
Okay, thanks. 5 over 6 minus 1 over 8. There you go, sir. Yes. We will, if it's a class period like today, let's see in this show. Oh, goodness, we'll probably have to have it then.
Not to look up and just.
A little bit on the early side. All right, once you get 17 over 24, we'll figure that out in a little bit, okay? That's the right answer, 17 over 24, okay? How many people got it? Beautiful. Okay, so the only, and I know my class is supposed to be done, but I'm gonna take like 1 more minute real quick, because that's why I said we had to start on time. There is one specific problem I want you all to look at. Everybody on your workbook, turn to number 11 on the back. Okay? All right. Now for a problem like this one, okay? So on this kind of problem, so this is on page 108, we have 1 over 2 minus 1 over 3, and you have to compare that, meaning is that side greater or less than or equal to the other side, which is 1 over 6 plus 1 over 6, okay? Well, you obviously can't compare this stuff until you have the answers, right? So the first thing I'm gonna have to do on this left side of the problem right here is I'm gonna have to work this thing out, right? I gotta find a common denominator. So what's my common denominator over here gonna be, guys? 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are my denominators. 6, okay? So tell me, what would my number right here become? 3. Good. You're right. What would my number over here become? 2. What's 3, 6 minus 2, 6? 1, 6. Okay. So I finally got an answer on this side. Now let's move to the other side. This one already had a common denominator, didn't it? So I don't have to really even do any work except for just add. So what's 1, 6 plus 1, 6? 2, 6. Okay. So now I can compare. I have a fraction that I'm comparing to a fraction. How do I compare fractions? What do? We learned this in the last chapter. Cross multiply. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. What's bigger, 6 or 12? 12. So this is then the bigger side. Okay. What? You could have, but you didn't have to. Yeah. But you could have simplified this to 1/3, and you still would have gotten that side being larger. What?
When you compare fractions, if denominators are the same, then I just normally compare the numerator.
Yeah, you can. That's absolutely true. You can. Yeah. But cross multiplying will always work. Okay. All right. So listen, tonight you have a little assignment. And your assignment is to do the evens on this page. Okay. So page 107 and 108, you only have to do the even number. So
We have to do number 2.
you do not have to do number 2 because number 2 is actually number 3's problem. So start with number 4 and you work the even numbers on page 107 and 108. Okay? And then I gotta take you to the library. So
That's an even story. No. I read it. If you got a library, it's